I'm so sorry. There was an accident. He didn't make it.
The call stayed open. The words did not fade. And in that single breath of silence, everything she believed about her life cracked. He stood by the window of their glass tower, looking down at a city that bowed to his name. His voice was calm, measured, practiced, the kind of voice that moved markets and ended careers. He thought the call had ended. He thought the room was empty. She was still there. Her hand rested on the cold marble counter, fingers numb as the truth settled into her chest like ice. The man she married, the man the world praised, the man who promised safety, he was planning her removal the same way he closed a bad deal. No shouting followed. No tears fell yet. She did not move. Silence had always been her armor. Her name was Lena Hartwell. To the world, she was the quiet wife of a billionaire investor. To the headlines, she was an accessory, elegant and forgettable. But beneath the tailored dresses and calm eyes lived someone forged in places. Where promises did not survive and only resolve did, she was a former combat nurse, and silence had saved her life more times than love ever had. Lena was visible in the way scars are visible only when you know how to look. A faint line near her wrist where shrapnel once kissed skin. A stiffness in her left knee on cold mornings. Eyes that never drifted far from exits. She carried herself with soft steps and steady breath, like someone trained to move without being noticed. At charity events, she stood one pace behind her husband, hands folded, smiled gentle. People mistook her quiet for weakness. They mistook her patience for fear. They did not know what calm looks like when it is earned under fire. In the first 30 seconds of knowing Lena, most people missed her entirely. That was how she liked it. Before the penthouse, before the wealth. Before the polished man who now plotted her erasure, there was dust and heat and the smell of metal and blood. Lena was 22 when she first learned how silence can scream. The field hospital sat just beyond the edge of chaos, a collection of canvas and steel where pain arrived faster than hope. The air was thick with fuel and sweat, and something coppery that never washed out of her. Memory, she learned to work with hands that shook only after the job was done. She learned to read pain without words. She learned that courage was not loud. It was the choice to stay when leaving would be easier. There was a night that never left her. A convoy hit by an unseen threat. Bodies carried in under a sky without stars. One young soldier kept asking for his sister, over and over, even as his pulse faded beneath her fingers. She held his hand and told him he was not alone. She stayed until the end, because no one should cross that line in silence. When she came home, the world felt unreal. Too clean. Too bright. Too loud about things that did not matter. She carried the weight quietly. She did not tell stories. She did not seek praise. She had just learned how to survive again. Meeting her future husband came later, at a fundraiser for wounded veterans. He was charming, composed, powerful. He admired her strength, or so he said. He admired how she never asked for anything. He admired her silence. She thought he understood it. The conflict did not arrive all at once. It crept in wearing kindness. First came the comments about her stepping back from her volunteer work. Then the subtle reminders that his image mattered. Then the quiet control over schedules, over friends, over which parts of her past were convenient to remember. At events, he spoke for her. People listened to him. She stayed silent. Old habits die hard. When she questioned a financial decision tied to a medical charity, his smile tightened. He reminded her who understood numbers. Who built empires? Who knew how the world worked? Around them, people saw nothing wrong. Wealth has a way of bending moral vision. Bystanders stayed comfortable. Silence spread. Lena noticed everything. She noticed how his patience thinned when she spoke about ethics. She noticed how his calls ended when she entered rooms. She noticed how security shifted, how access changed, how her world narrowed by inches. Still, she said nothing, because silence is not surrender. It is observation. The tension grew the way storms do, slow until they are not. The night of the call, Rain streaked the windows like thin cracks across the sky. He had told her he was heading to another meeting. She was packing for a medical outreach trip he no longer supported. Her presence in that space annoyed him now. She paused in the hallway when she heard her name. He spoke about risk, about reputation, about clean exits and final measures, about making sure she would not interfere again. The words were careful, legal, cold. Her breath slowed the way it had in emergencies. Her mind became clear. Fear knocked once and was ignored. When the call ended for him, it did not end for her. She stood there, unseen, as the truth revealed itself fully. This was not anger. This was planning, and planning can be countered. She walked into the bedroom, closed the door softly, and sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands rested steady in her lap. Inside her chest, something ancient and unbreakable woke up. She did not cry. She began to prepare. The next days passed with polite smiles and measured distance. He believed she was unaware. He believed silence meant ignorance. Lena began making calls of her own. Not to friends. Not to family. To people who understood quiet strength. Former colleagues. Legal minds who had served in places where lines blur. Board members who still believed in ethics more than profit. She sent documents. Recorded patterns. Shared timelines. She moved carefully, leaving no trace of panic. One night, she removed a small metal case from the back of a drawer. Inside were medals she never displayed. Not out of shame, but because honor does not need decoration. She touched them once, then closed the case. This was not about revenge. This was about survival. The shift came on a morning designed to showcase his power. The annual summit filled a grand hall with polished shoes and practiced smiles. Cameras waited. Investors murmured. He stood at the podium, flawless as ever, ready to speak about vision and leadership. Lena entered quietly and took a seat near the back. No one noticed her at first. As he began to speak, something changed. A ripple moved through the room. Phones lit up. Faces tightened. Whispers replaced applause. A legal notice appeared on screens. Then another. Then the board chair stood, expression pale and firm. He faltered. Lena remained still. The investigation was thorough. Financial manipulation. Abuse of influence. Documented intent that crossed ethical lines no wealth could protect. The call had not been the only evidence. It had been the spark. Security approached him, not her. In that moment, the power shifted without a single raised voice. Someone near Lena whispered that she was brave. She did not respond. As he was escorted away, his eyes found her for the first time that day. Confusion gave way to something else. Realization. He saw her not as an accessory, but as the force he had underestimated. She met his gaze calmly. Strength does not announce itself. It arrives when needed. Outside, reporters waited. Cameras searched for drama. Lena walked past them without stopping. She felt the sun on her face. The city smelled like rain and concrete and possibility. Later that week, the story spread. Not about betrayal, but about quiet resilience. About the woman who refused to disappear. At a medical center funded by recovered assets, a wall was dedicated to silent heroes. No names and lights, just a line etched in steel. Silence is not weakness. It is choice. Another read. Honor does not need permission. And a third. Some battles are won by those who wait in the end. Lena returned to her work. She stood beside hospital beds again. She held hands. She listened. She stayed. The world moved on, as it always does. But somewhere between the noise, her story lingered. A reminder that dignity does not shout, that courage can be quiet, and that those who mistake silence for surrender often learn too late what strength really sounds like. If this story moved you, share where you are watching from. Leave your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories that honor the unseen strength of silent heroes.